Hey guys, it's Hau'oli HD here, and today it's time to cover glitches in Pokemon Sun and Moon. The ones these games have to offer are all over the place in terms of battling and messing around in the overworld. Everything from getting out of bounds by petting a Turos, giving moves 16 times base power, guaranteeing certain one-hit KO moves always hit, turning Pokemon invisible, turning a Giratina into a Rotom, and a whole lot more. One quick thing before we get started, some of the glitches I will cover today are only possible in the earlier versions of the game, that being versions 1.0 and 1.1. So I'll mention which those are, but there really aren't a lot to begin with. But I'd also recommend checking the description for further clarification on which those are. If you want to try out those glitches, you can easily delete the update data off your 3DS, mess around with them, and re-download the update easy peasy. So it's pretty straightforward. But with that being said, let's get into Pokemon Sun and Moon glitches. Okay. I know I usually start off with one of the best glitches, and this is no exception at all. I'll explain more why this glitch is already so special to me in a minute, but I wanted to get into what it is and how to do it. So as you can see, I'm just running around out of bounds like I have a walkthrough walls action replay code on or something, but I can promise you this is the vanilla game. By petting a Turos in a specific spot, we can somehow shut off the game's collision and run around Hau'oli City in a very unique way. Hau'oli City? I don't know. Someone's gonna tell me in the comments. So this interaction takes place about 2 to 3 hours into starting a new game. After you take down Team Skull for the first time at the marina. You're then supposed to head up to Route 2, which there is a Turos that will be waiting for you to pet them again. After the dialogue, you'll be able to walk up and press A on them. We need to do this from a very specific spot, and that's on this line in the road, standing as far away as you can from the Turos while still being able to interact with them. Basically just try and mimic where I'm standing now and press A. Some more dialogue will happen, but you'll see once the text box closes, your character shifts a few inches forward. This is what triggers the glitch. It may take a few tries, as it took me around 10 plus times, but if you stood in just the right spot and got the right shift, when you try and run into the tree, you just go right through it. The game's collision is now basically gone at this point, allowing us to run all over Hau'oli City any way we want to. You can stay out of bounds, exploring the outer perimeter of water, but the game also just lets you run through buildings, walls, and just about anything else. This whole thing really just blew my mind the first time it happened, as the setup sounds crazy, but that little shift in the dialogue is what made all the difference. I just ran around the city for a while and saw all there was to see. Hitting any load zone for any other route or going near doors will cause you to transition to that area, effectively correcting the glitch. So just keep that in mind. Running off randomly in any direction will get you to the Void, which is just an endless dark area with this blue going across the top. I tried running straight for about 10 minutes, but nothing really happened. But yeah, this was really exciting for me to try out, as this glitch was never really talked about online. I actually just stumbled across a YouTube video from 7 years ago showing this glitch off, and at first glance I was pretty dang skeptical, as it's one of those, trust me bro, no hacks or mods, with a pretty poor video quality and very little explanation. I really had no expectations of this working, but I knew I had to at least test it before crossing it off my list. So I spent a good 2 or 3 hours playing through the opening story just for this. And let me tell you, my jaw hit the floor after at least 10 attempts of it not working. I was just about to give up when I finally pulled it off out of nowhere. You may need to save and reset a couple times to get the position perfect, but it's honestly worth the 10 to 15 minutes you'll probably spend setting this up. I fell in love with this glitch just because it's one of those classic poor quality YouTube videos that are usually fake a good 90% of the time, so I don't think anyone really bothered to look into it. So I was very shocked when it ended up working, and I can proudly say this guy was not lying. You may need to start from a new save, but if you're someone who loves exploring out of bounds, I highly recommend this one. Since we're already at the beginning part of the game, let's cover another one super quick. This one is not nearly as cool, but it's still interesting. This takes place only a few minutes after the Turos thing when taking on the first trial. Depending on whether you play Pokemon Sun or Moon, a different totem Pokemon will appear here. Sun is Gumshoos and Moon is Alolan Raticate. Well, regardless of which game you're playing, when the totem Pokemon first appears, you will always hear Gumshoos cry play. This is what an Alolan Raticate normally sounds like for context. So I guess the devs forgot to change the cry that plays here when making Moon. But it's also kind of sloppy by them, as this is the first major totem Pokemon fight and it has a bug in it. Sun obviously doesn't have this issue as you fight Gumshoos there, so this is also the only glitch we'll cover that is exclusive to one of the games. Okay, it's already time for our first battle glitch, which there are a ton of in these games, and this is one of the better ones for sure. So this glitch involves Mimikyu and a Pokemon with the move Rollout. You could technically do this in a singles battle, but that would require the other Pokemon you're facing to be Mimikyu. So I'm just going into a doubles battle with both of them on my team. Once in the doubles battle, the Mimikyu can do anything it wants really, but you'll want to keep the opponent's Pokemon alive for a while, so I ended up just spamming Swords Dance. Anyway, the important step is having the Rollout Pokemon use it to attack Mimikyu. If you don't know, Rollout is a move that locks you in for 5 turns, using Rollout every time, but the damage doubles every time as well. So it would go ×1, ×2, ×4, ×8, and then ×16 for the final hit. But Mimikyu is the one getting hit, and their signature ability is Disguise, which basically ignores the first hit of damage it takes before the disguise is broken and its head topples over. This specific scenario causes Rollout to glitch, and the damage multiplier will not be incremented on the first time, even though the turn does. So on my second turn when Mimikyu takes his first real hit, since it's technically the second turn of Rollout, it should be ×2 damage, but it's only 1 times. You might see where this is going, but following the end of 5 turns, Rollout will register as over, but since the damage Markiplier got desynced, since the damage multiplier got desynced, the next move you use will automatically apply ×16 its base power, which is absolutely insane. I tried to prove this the best way I could by switching out Mimikyu and bringing in a full HP level 100 Raichu. This is what a normally weak move, Tackle, now does to it. It knocks it out clean in one shot. Don't believe me? This is what a Tackle would normally do to it. It only lost 18 HP. But since 18 × 16 is 288, it makes perfect sense that this glitch caused them to faint. Some other interesting things about this glitch and Rollout: if you use Defense Curl, that final turn multiplier will turn up to ×32 their base power, which I don't know if anything could even survive that. And one other neat thing, if you decide to spend that bonus turn using Rollout again, it will still apply the ×16 multiplier, but you won't be locked in for 5 turns again. It considered that Rollout as the 5th turn as well. So yeah, if you're able to set this up in battle, it could cause some serious damage. But considering you need a Mimikyu and a Pokemon with Rollout on the field, and the Rollout has to go all 5 turns, it's probably pretty rare for this to happen. But I still love it as it's hilarious to watch Tackle do so much damage. Want another broken battle strategy? How about guaranteeing you land a one-hit KO move? As ridiculous as it sounds, it's possible. I'm going to show you what's likely the easiest setup for this, and there are other options I believe, but this is the simplest in my opinion. We again need another doubles battle for this, so I have Nidoking and Oranguru. Nidoking works because it's a poison type Pokemon that knows the move Toxic, which even though it's normally only 90% accurate, it always hits if the user is a poison type, and it can learn Horn Drill as a one-hit KO move. We then need a Pokemon with the move Instruct, and Oranguru is the only Pokemon that can learn it, so we're forced to have him as our second. But we also need the Oranguru to outspeed Nidoking so we can use Instruct first, so Trick Room is also necessary for reversing the turn order. Okay, that may have been a little bit confusing, but you need 2 Pokemon, one poison type that knows Toxic and can learn a one-hit KO move, and an Oranguru with Instruct that can outspeed the Nidoking either by the extreme difference in levels or with Trick Room. The one-hit KO move can technically be anything you want it to be, but since it'll be a guaranteed hit, it kind of makes the most sense to just do that, even though it could be another move that doesn't already have 100% accuracy either. But anyway, enter a doubles battle with these 2 Pokemon. Once in the battle, we need to do Toxic and Trick Room on the first turn. We do the Toxic first because Instruct will cause the Nidoking to do whatever move it did last, so in this case, Toxic, followed by the move we actually selected on turn 2. So now once Toxic has been used once and Trick Room is activated, it's time for turn 2. This time select Horn Drill, which if you didn't know is only 30% accurate, so less than 1/3 of the time it will connect, and then Instruct with the Oranguru. Now it's time to sit back and watch the glitch unfold. Oranguru will go before Nidoking, use Instruct to cause the Nidoking to use Toxic, which again will always hit since they're a poison type, but then since we're using 2 moves in 1 turn, the game applies the Toxic Never Miss flag to the one-hit KO Horn Drill, and will land every single time you do this setup. And when I say every single time, I mean without fail. Even if the Pokemon is dug underground, in the middle of Dig or Fly, or anything else, the Pokemon cannot escape what's coming. This is also why I said you might as well use Horn Drill as the guaranteed move, as you could use another move that has a chance to hit, but why would you? Why wouldn't you just pick a move that skips all the fluff and auto one-shots them? So yeah, another pretty specific scenario, but honestly is more likely to be pulled off than the Rollout one, as you really just need the Pokemon to survive 2 turns. So have fun in your next battle against your friend. They'll think you're cheating with how accurate those Horn Drills are. Alright, this one's pretty funny and pretty easy to trigger. To quote my last video on Pokemon Gen 3 glitches, Pokemon evolve. Yes, I know. Thank you. Okay, but seriously, when a Pokemon evolves, you're taken to this cutscene sequence where you can watch your current Pokemon transform into their next stage. But I want you to pay really close attention to the beginning part of these cutscenes, specifically in the top left corner of the main screen. Did you catch it? Well, if you didn't, right as the cutscene starts and the screen is fading in, there is a frame or two where you can literally see the Pokemon you are about to become. Yeah, so in this first case, Torracat is evolving. You can literally see Wolfie VGC's favorite Pokemon of all time standing there in the top left. It's pretty funny, and since knowing this, I can't help but watch it every single time I see this evolution cutscene now. My best guess is the game tries to load the model of the next stage prior to the cutscene, so it has access to it right away when you come out of this glowing orb, but it does so a frame later than it should, so you're able to see it as the black is fading out. To my knowledge, this happens every single time you watch this evolution cutscene, whether it be from leveling up or using an item. It always seems to show up. Pokemon seems to have a running history of showing models a frame before they're supposed to, and I know I've used this example multiple times in past videos, but the Scarlet and Violet version is still so funny to me. As cutscenes are fading out in those games, NPCs and other Pokemon models will revert back to their default T-pose a frame before the screen fully goes black. So it's nice to go back to older games and see the same dang thing happen here too. So start staring at the top left corner when evolutions are happening in this game, as it literally gives you a sneak peek preview of the Pokemon you are about to own. Okay, now onto an interesting one involving Pokemon cries. As you probably know, each Pokemon has its own unique and identifiable cry, like Regirock for example.
Okay, Christ.
Well, even though each Pokemon usually only has one cry, Pokemon also come in different forms, meaning it's the same Pokemon but with a different look, typing, or moves. One example is Oricorio, who has 4 forms, the default Bailey, Pom-Pom, Pow, and Sensu. While it's technically the same Pokemon, each of the forms have their own unique cry. I want you to pay close attention to each of them and see how they are different. Pay special attention to the default Bailey cry on the first red one, as we're going to hear it a lot in a moment. So now that you've heard them and can tell that they differ between forms, it's time to actually talk about the glitch. Keep the menu open and go into Pokemon Refresh, where you can pet and feed the Pokemon in your party. When starting, you'll hear the Pokemon's cry pretty much right away, which you would expect to match the Pokemon and its form. However, this glitch is that the first cry it makes will always be the Pokemon's default form. I'll play the audio here in a second, but when I switch and throw out any other of the Oricorio forms, they'll all play the cry of the default Belay one. Have a listen as I throw each one of them out. So yeah, not really sure why it happens, but I guess the game doesn't apply the form variations to the cry until after they've been thrown out and play the cry once. Every time after the initial one of throwing them out will always play the correct cry, just not the first time. Very interesting, and can be done with any other Pokemon that have form-specific cries when throwing them into Pokemon Refresh. While on the topic of Pokemon forms, next up is a glitch that really doesn't help you at all, and is more of a programming error. Yay! We have access to the legendary genies in these games, those being Thundurus, Landorus, and Tornadus, which also all have Incarnate and Therian forms, changing the way they look, their cry, and some of their stats. Well, there was an oversight with the TM move Smart Strike, a Steel-type move that can be learned by Thundurus, but only in its incarnate form, which is very odd considering, yes, there are some moves that only Thundurus can learn but not Landorus or Tornadus, and vice versa, where some can't learn what others can. But for every other TM, it doesn't matter what form they're in. Only Smart Strike for some reason. As you can see, it's only letting me teach Incarnate Thundurus the move, and the Therian says unavailable. Now, can you literally teach Thundurus Incarnate Smart Strike, and then use the Reveal Glass to change the form to Therian? Yeah. So this has to be a programming error that I just didn't notice. So now we, the players, have to spend an extra 15 seconds switching forms just to teach it Smart Strike. Yay. One more glitch involving forms, and this has gotta be the best one. And honestly, one of the most interesting glitches this game has in general. So I'm sure you're familiar with forms at this point. Well, Giratina has two of them. Their default altered form, which is when it has legs, and its origin form, when it's a flying snake. You can change forms by giving it the Grisius orb to hold. It will then be in its origin form while holding it. Well, funny enough, and I really don't understand how this works, if you swap the orb for different colors of nectar, some very weird things start to happen. Starting off with a normal one, if you swap the orb for red nectar, it will do what you expect and return it to its altered form. Makes sense, right? Well, switch it back to the orb again so it's back in its origin form, and this time swap it out for yellow nectar. This time it will play the transformation noise, and you can see that purple puff of smoke, but it stayed in its origin form. Like, even if I back out and look at the summary, it's still in its origin form, even without the required Grisius orb. Again, mind you, if I were to give it yellow nectar without holding anything before, it behaves like it should and it stays in its altered form. Only when I swap it does this happen. But trust me, it gets weirder. If you start off by holding the orb like normal and then swap it for either pink or purple nectar, it will return back to its expected altered form, but Giratina sounds a little different now. As you might be able to tell, this is Rotom's cry. Giving them the pink or purple nectar gives Giratina Rotom's cry. I have zero idea how this happens or why any of these nectars cause the effects that they do. For context, the nectars are only supposed to be used with Oricorio to change between the 4 forms, hence why there are 4 nectars. So why on earth does this affect Giratina? I really have no clue. The only resemblance is that these items both change the forms of Pokemon, but the whole thing is just very weird where you have to already be holding the Grisius orb prior to swapping it for the nectar. But yeah, even in battles, Giratina will now sound like Rotom. This is incredibly odd to me, but still very cool. I really like how I can keep it in its origin form while holding something other than the orb, and changing a Pokemon's cry to Rotom is just nuts. How about next we break the move Trick Room? As we talked about before, Trick Room is a move that essentially reverses the turn order, as now Pokemon with lower speed go first and faster ones last. This is normally what happens on paper, but fun fact, if your Pokemon is just too fast, I guess it just somehow breaks out of Trick Room because it still goes first. 1809 is the magic number we need to have a Pokemon speed be at to do this. So I chose Speed Form Deoxys, but I believe there are other Pokemon that can reach 1809 as well. My level 100 Deoxys is timid nature and has perfect speed EVs and IVs, bringing it up to a total base speed stat of 504. So I paired it with agility, meaning in 3 uses it would bring it to +6, giving it essentially times 4 its base, which comes out to a grand total of 2016, which I guess is higher than the Trick Room limit. So here was the turn prior to breaking out. You can see here I have +4 speed from using 2 agilities, and Trick Room is activated, which causes all the slower Pokemon to go first, with my Deoxys finally using its last agility last. So now I'm at +6, which should mean with Trick Room that I go even more last, but I end up just going first, like Trick Room was not even active. But then you see the Happiny go before my level 92 Oranguru, so Trick Room is clearly still up. So yeah, I have no idea why Trick Room has a limit, maybe it doesn't and the 1809 speed barrier is some other issue. I have no idea. But if you have an insanely fast Pokemon like Deoxys, and your opponent is a Trick Room dependent team, maybe you can catch them off guard with this. It's a pretty scary thing knowing Pokemon can just ignore moves like this. And don't worry, this isn't just a glitch in Sun and Moon, it's also in Black and White, X and Y, and even Sword and Shield. So be careful if you're battling super fast Pokemon in one of those games. Okay, another battle glitch, and since Deoxys got such an advantage last time, we're gonna punish him for this one. So the choice items, choice band, choice scarf, and choice specs all force the Pokemon to be locked into whatever move they use first. Trying to do another move afterwards will block you completely. However, there are moves and abilities that prevent the use of held items. One such move is what I have on my Palisand here, Embargo, which blocks items for 5 turns. So going into a double battle here, turn 1 I use Psychic, and since I'm holding a choice scarf, I should be locked into it, but then use Embargo onto the Deoxys. So now turn 2, which is turn 1 of 5 with Embargo, I'm allowed to select other moves, but they will always just fail. So it gives the illusion that I can pick a different move, but the choice scarf is still like half applied, and any other move other than Psychic will fail. So I stall out a few turns and wait for the embargo to end, which effectively gives me my choice scarf back, but still keeps me locked into Psychic and even comes up with the text that the scarf prevents any other moves. So the whole situation is just really weird, and you would think that blocking held items would allow me to use other moves, but they all fail. And then once I regain my choice item, it still locks me into the move I used on turn 1. Really a strange effect overall, so hopefully you don't run into Pokemon with either the ability Klutz or someone that knows moves like Embargo or Magic Room, as you will permanently be stuck using that move regardless. Okay, this is probably the most useful glitch overall, as we're able to level up Pokemon, get free rare items, and other goodies in a matter of minutes. The whole thing revolves around Pelago, which is a side micromanaging game you can play within Sun and Moon. Each of the 5 islands have some special thing you can do on them. One lets you discover wild Pokemon that appear on the island and collect beans. Second lets you plant berries that double when they're fully grown. Third is a cave exploration island that can return you rare expensive items or other useful ones. Fourth is basically free XP you can use to level up your Pokemon that you leave in there, and the last is a spa that you can place regular Pokemon in to increase friendship, or if you leave eggs, you can get them to hatch in bulk. So all the items are pretty unique and net you money, levels, berries, and other goods. But the catch is that it's time-based, meaning you have to wait around while the Pokemon screw around on the islands. Well, you might see where we're going with this, but you can cheese this whole time thing very easily by changing your system's date and time. So start by loading up your islands with Pokemons, beans, and berries, and then back out and save your game. We then need to close the game and return to the 3DS home menu. But between you and me, I'm not actually on real 3DS hardware, and in fact using a piece of software that rhymes with Ritra. So please ignore the fact that this says Alpha Sapphire, pretend it says Pokemon Moon. Ooh. Okay. Go to your system settings, other settings, date and time, and then today's date. Now, back when this glitch was first discovered, people would set their times back to January 31st, 2017, and you can do that too if you want, but it also works if you just change your date to one day before a new month from whatever the current date is. It doesn't have to be this, it just has to roll over to a new month. But what does matter is your time. We need to set this to either 23:58 or 23:59. This one is more of a personal preference. We basically need to load back into our game and the save file before it switches over to midnight. So whether you want to give yourself 2 minutes or 1 is really up to you. It may just mean more waiting. Anyway, now from this point, we can back out of this and quickly go back into our save file of Pokemon Moon. So now just mash A through the title screen and load up your save and wait until the clock switches over to midnight the next day. You can easily check this by clicking on save and looking what time it says, checking your home menu of your real 3DS, or setting a stopwatch from when you set the time to 1 or 2 minutes depending on which you did. Once it switches over days, go into your Pokemon Pelago, and boom, everything will be finished and ready for you to reap the benefits. My Pokemon leveled up, I got some rare items from the cave, got double the amount of berries I started with, and my Pokemon have a higher friendship with me now. Hooray! This also means we can just redo these steps and you have new rewards within a few minutes, or however fast you can set everything and reset your date and time. So while it's not really a glitch because we're just manipulating the date, it's still a very useful exploit to know. I didn't do this a crazy amount of times, but from what I read about online, you can realistically get a Pokemon from level 60 to 100 in about an hour. And obviously, if you were doing lower level Pokemon, it takes less XP to level up, so it would be even faster. You just have to get good at repeating these steps over and over. Now, like you saw earlier, this is only possible on versions 1.0 and 1.1 of the game. But again, if you really care about doing this, you can always delete the update data off your 3DS, do this glitch a bunch until you're good, and then re-download the update. But I've been on 1.0 this whole time, so I don't really have to worry about that. But yeah, likely the most useful glitch as the rewards are so nice for only taking a few minutes. Definitely try this one out if you're still into Sun and Moon and need to train up Pokemon quickly. So this is definitely one of the weirder ones and turned out to be way more interesting than I thought. So one aspect of Sun and Moon that always stuck out to me graphically were the model outlines. Characters like yourself, NPCs, and Pokemon have really good looking models, but you can also quickly notice these gray outlines. They usually appear around the outer edges of models, I guess to help distinct the character from the background environment, but I always thought they were a little too much. Well, there's actually a few square feet where you can disable them. Fly on over to the Aether Paradise and head inside. We need to get to floor B1F, the docks area, so just run straight to the elevator and select that floor. Just over on the left side is this stack of crates. They're normally just decoration, but stand close to them in the gap between the left and right ones. For some reason, this causes your character's outline to completely disappear, leaving us with a way better looking model. Look how smooth and vibrant it looks without all those gray lines everywhere. As you might also be able to notice, there seems to be this dark line in line with the topmost part of the crates. This seems to be like where the threshold is where the game starts rendering the outlines, as you can sort of stand in the middle and get a mix of outlines and smoothness. This was so cool looking to me, and it's crazy how much of a difference they make. To my knowledge, this is the only place I know of that does this. I believe it's just because when you get close to the crates, the game thinks you're hidden from the camera, so it stops drawing the outlines to improve performance. I guess. I don't know. But since there is a visible gap between the crates, we get to see what really happens when you go behind objects. Still, I think it's super neat and really makes me wish the game never had outlines to begin with. There are cheat codes you can add to permanently turn them off, and I even covered this in my Sun and Moon modding video from 4 years ago. My god, I've been doing this a while. But yeah, a tiny pocket that can magically improve the visuals of this game. But I don't know, maybe there are people out there that like these big outlines. Let me know. On the topic of weird graphical glitches you can do by standing in a specific spot in a specific location, I should coin that term. This one isn't as good as removing outlines, but I'ma still show it. We need to go to Poni Island for this one, so fly into Seafolk Village and head up into the Poni Wilds. The location is this elevated surface off to the right side of the wilds with this tree. Walk up the little slope and past the tree on the right. If you stand or walk over a specific spot, you may notice the shadow below the tree flickers and disappears for a brief moment. Carefully inching your steps can cause it to flicker slower, or even stay like half disappeared if you stand in just the right spot. Yes, this is it. So next time you find yourself in the Poni Wilds, I highly recommend slightly considering maybe coming over to this tree and trying it out for yourself. Well, let's keep tying glitches into each other, shall we? Since we're already on Poni Island, we now need to head to the vast Poni Canyon trial site where you fight Totem Komodo. We don't need to fight them or anything, just head to the trial site inside of this cave. When stepping inside, you'll notice that there really isn't any music playing, just ambient noise of winds gusting through. Well, this audio track seems to differ from any other one in the game. If we open up our menu and select any option, the noise completely disappears, leaving us with only the sounds of the menu. It's kind of creepy, as you normally always have some music or sound playing, but now we're just left alone with our thoughts here. What a scary place that is. Anyway, you could get some use out of this. Since there are no other noises playing, you could use this to capture sounds of Pokemon's cry you have in your party, so could maybe be useful for you fellow content creators out there. But other than that, it's just strange that this is the only place in the game that does this. I tried checking out some of the other trial sites, but they seem to behave just fine. It's just this one for some reason. This battle one is kinda pointless and is just more of a visual thing. It involves the move Baton Pass and the ability Own Tempo. Baton Pass is a move that allows you to switch out Pokemon with another while passing on stat changes and status conditions like Confusion and Perish Song. But Own Tempo is an ability that lets Pokemon ignore Confusion. So what happens if a Pokemon Baton passes Confusion onto a Pokemon with Own Tempo? I set this up by using Swagger on my own Pokemon, getting it confused, and then Baton passing with it. When Slowbro came in, the turn continued with Volbeat using Leer. Then finally the ability tag came on screen saying Slowbro snapped out of Confusion. But yeah, that's really it. It just delays this message popping up until after another Pokemon takes their turn. When I was first looking into this glitch, I thought it meant that the confusion would stay for one of Slowbro's turns, then go away, but nope, it's a pretty insignificant visual effect that only gets delayed by a turn. I even tried doing it in a singles battle where the other Pokemon went first. This time I was able to select a move, but even then before going, it popped up and cleared my confusion before I could attack. So I tried my hardest to make this glitch do something interesting, even if it meant giving a Pokemon with Own Tempo confusion, but no dice. Just a small glitch that you may not even notice happening while playing. This next one is another that you really don't want happening, but thankfully is only a glitch on version 1.0 of the game. To quote my last video on Pokemon Gen 3 glitches, and also earlier in this video, Pokemon evolve. Oh my god, thank you, you're too kind. But another mechanic of evolution is the ability to learn new moves. Take Butterfree for example. They learn certain moves at certain levels, but also learn Gust when they evolve into Butterfree. And this could be at any level really. However, watch what happens when I use a rare candy to level up this Metapod from level 10 to 11. This causes them to start evolving into Butterfree, so on paper, according to this list, they should try and learn both Gust, since it's an evolution move, and Confusion since they're level 11. However, following the cutscene, they will only try to learn Gust. Confusion never gets brought up, and I can prove that they were supposed to learn Confusion too by leveling up this already evolved Butterfree from 10 to 11. See, they try and learn it. So something with the evolution move overrode them trying to learn Confusion. This glitch does only affect moves that the Pokemon also learn at level 1, which checks out as Butterfree could learn it at level 1 along with Gust. And you can, I guess, correct the glitch by just going to the move reminder, and we'll see Confusion as an option there, but it'll cost you 1 heart scale for this error. So a pretty specific scenario to even trigger this glitch, but I'm sure it's happened to at least one of you watching, even if you didn't notice it. This is one of the more interesting visual glitches you can get in battle, turning a Pokemon completely invisible. It's kind of a unique setup. We need a Pokemon with Skydrop that has to faint after using the move. So I found that having the Skydrop user hold a life orb while on low HP was a good way to achieve this. And one last thing before entering the battle, go into your options and set battle effects to off. This is the main component to the setup, and you'll see why in a minute. So now in battle with your Pokemon on low HP, use Skydrop on a Pokemon. First turn they'll get thrown up into the air, but since we have the battle effects off, they'll just kind of turn invisible. Then do whatever on the second turn and wait for the Skydrop to happen. You'll see that the target starts losing HP, but you still can't see either of them. The life orb then kicks in pretty quickly and the Skydrop user dropped to 0. This feint basically interrupts the game, making the other Pokemon visible again and plays out the fainting sequence. Following this, the other Pokemon is still alive, but just invisible. It's funny to watch the camera pan around in between turns, just zooming in and out on nothing. In a doubles battle, you can also knock out the other Pokemon, leaving you with just your Pokemon visible. You would think this battle is over just by looking at the screen, but the Krokorok is still standing. They will stay this way for the rest of battle, even when getting hit or doing attacks of their own. The only time you will see the Pokemon again is when they play their fainting animation. So really just a visual thing, doesn't change much about the actual battle itself, but I still enjoyed watching the battle play out with an invisible Pokemon. So for you people who turn battle effects off, weirdos, try this one out. Okay, next isn't even really a glitch, just a blatant mistake by the developers. Memento is a move that causes the user to lose all of its HP, but at the cost of harshly lowering the target's attack and special attack. However, if we activate our Z power to use Z Memento, it says its special effect is that it restores the replacement's HP. Even when in the middle of using the move, it will specifically say, Muck will restore its replacement's HP using its Z power. So after this whole fancy cutscene finishes and Muck faints, you'll notice that my Decidueye has 171 HP prior to switching in. So how much does Z Memento heal from the replacement like it said it was going to do? None. Nada. The effect just never triggers and I'm still on 171 HP. Great. What was the point of that then? This luckily did get fixed in later updates, and it did start restoring HP like it should have, but us day oneers just had to live with this glitch for a while. So is this one of those glitches you should delete your update data for? Absolutely not. But it's still neat to see that the devs messed up the coding somewhere along the way, because this Z move does absolutely nothing. Another not so fun thing can happen with Curse. Given a very specific scenario, it's possible to use the ghost type version of Curse on yourself. You would need a Pokemon with the ability Protean that can also learn Curse. This isn't normally possible with any Pokemon, and the only way of doing that is having a Pokemon that knows Curse get skill swapped with another Pokemon that has Protean. Since this is a demonstration, I just forced my Greninja who has the Protean ability to also learn the move Curse, which again isn't normally possible, but just pretend I went through the process of finding an NPC with the ability Protean and skill swapping it. Anyway, Protean is an ability that changes the user's type to whatever type the move that they're using is. So in this case, Curse is a ghost type move, so my Greninja would change into ghost type prior to using it. However, as you may know, Curse does things differently depending on if they're ghost type or not. As shown here, I'm in another battle with two Pokemon that know Curse. One is a ghost type and one is not. The ghost type is forced to target any other Pokemon but themselves, which also lowers their own HP by half and places a curse on the target, causing them to slowly lose HP at the end of every turn. However, a non-ghost user is forced to only target themselves, which causes their speed to drop but raises their attack and defense. So keep these differences in mind as we go back to our Protean Greninja with Curse. You'll see that we're forced to target ourselves, which is technically correct as we aren't currently a ghost type, but then when I use the move, Protean kicks in and we turn into a ghost type, causing us to lose half of our own HP, then place the curse on ourselves, effectively losing 75% of our own HP in a single turn with no real benefits. Nice. Great. Awesome. So basically just an oversight with how you're forced to select a target prior to the available targets list updating mid-turn by you switching to ghost type. This is also a super specific scenario we'd have to skill swap Protean onto a Pokemon that already knows Curse, so it's likely that 99.9% of you would never experience this without going out of your way to do so. If you watch my Pokemon X and Y glitch video, you may remember this one, as it's a glitch in Gens 5 and 6 as well. As you may know, Pokemon can hold certain berries and berry juice, and if their HP falls below half, they will pull it out and eat it to restore some HP. Well, there's a specific yet common scenario where the game ignores this entirely: confusion. If a Pokemon holding one of these berries gets confused, attacks themselves, and drops their own HP below half, the berry will not activate, leaving us more vulnerable. So the game seems to only recognize this if another Pokemon attacks them. It can't be themselves. You do a pretty decent amount of damage each time you hit yourself, so if you're really unlucky, you could knock yourself out completely without the berry ever activating. But most of the time, it'll still leave you vulnerable and could even be the difference why you don't survive a turn. This is more of a fun visual one. There are a few different effects you can trigger when in battles, such as weather and terrain effects. But if the terrain effect wears off before the weather, it mistakenly alters the background when outdoors. I did this by using Tapu Koko and a Togekiss. When the battle first starts, Tapu Koko's ability auto-sets electric terrain, and the whole field turns yellow. Then I wait a turn before using Rain Dance with Togekiss. So now electric terrain will wear off before the rain. When this happens a few turns later, the terrain will clear and the weather will go back to sunny, even though the rain is still going. I guess the game doesn't consider it to be possible to have both up at the same time, so it goes from electric terrain back to default weather of sunny. But the rain is still coming down, creating this unique effect. For reference, if you just use Rain Dance, the sky turns gray and cloudy like you see here. So in theory, when the terrain wears off, it should go to this weather, but the overlapping field effects creates this weird visual bug. Again, the effects of Rain Dance are still active, we just get to battle in this nice sun shower instead. So there were a whole lot of unique glitches in Pokemon Sun and Moon. I really enjoyed going back to these games as I have so many fond memories from this generation and might be my favorite on the 3DS. I don't know, I can never decide. If you've made it this far in the video, I really appreciate it. Anyway, there are still some Pokemon generations I haven't gotten to yet, so be on the lookout for those. I wasn't sure whether or not to include Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon in this video, as they're kind of the same game, but not really, so obviously I did not. But that video will hopefully be coming soon down the pipeline as well. But for now, I'm gonna get up out of here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, see ya!